I have been, and I am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not dulled them, not destroyed them. Above all was the sense of hearing, acute. I heard things in heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and observe how calmly, how healthily I can tell you the whole story. Now, really, it's impossible for me to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Objects, there was none. Passion, there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold, I certainly had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. And whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now, this is the point. You fancy me mad. Mad men know nothing. You should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, just at midnight, I would turn the latch of his door and open it very, very gently, so that I might not disturb the old man as he slept. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I first put in a dark lantern, closed. It was all closed so that no light shone out, and then I thrust in my head up. You just would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it very, very slowly. It took me an entire hour to get my head so far within the room that I could actually see the old man as he lay upon his bed. And then, when my head was well within the room, then I undid the lantern. Cautiously, very, very cautiously, until the hinges creaked. And it just so much that a single thin ray of light fell full upon the vulture eye, and this I did for 7 long nights. Every night, just at midnight, and I found the eye was always closed, so it made it impossible for me to do the work. It was not the old man who vexed me. No, it was his evil eye. And every morning, when the day broke, I would walk boldly into his chamber, and I would call him by name. I would greet him in a very hearty tone. I asked him how he had passed the night. So you can see that he would have had to have been a very, well, profound man, indeed, to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. I watched his minute hands more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my powers, my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph to think that there I was opening the door, little by little by little, and the old man was not even thinking of my secret thoughts of these. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, because suddenly he shot up in his bed as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back shutters had all been closed and fastened through fear of robbers. So I knew that he couldn't see me, and I just kept pushing that door very, very steadily. Now I had got my head within the room, and I was just about to open the lantern when suddenly my thumb slipped on the tin fastening.
Who's there?
Kept quite still. I said nothing. For another hour, I did not move a muscle, and I didn't hear the old man lie down. He was still just sitting up in bed listening. And then presently I heard a slight groan. And I knew that it was a groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain. It was not a groan of grief. It was a low, stifled sound that emerges from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. And I knew that sound very well. As I say, I knew it very well. I knew what the old man felt, and I pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying there, awake. Since that first slight noise when he had turned in his bed, his fears had ever since been growing upon him. He was trying to fathom them causeless, but he couldn't. He was saying to himself, it's just the mouse crossing the floor.
What's crossing the floor?
It's just the wind in the chimney.
It's just the wind in the chimney.
Perhaps it's a cricket. It's made just a single chirp.
Cricket.
Trying so very desperately to comfort himself with all of these suppositions, but he found it all in vain. All in vain, because death, in approaching the old man, had stalked. In wicked black shadow before him was now enveloping the victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he could neither see me or hear me, to actually feel the presence of my head within the room. When I had waited a long time very patiently, without hearing the old man lie down, I resolved to open a crevice in the lantern, a very, very little crevice. So I did. Gently, very gently, just so much that a single thin thread, like the thread of a spider, fell full upon the vulture eye. It was open. It was wide open. I saw its perfect distinctness, hideous blue with a veil over it that chilled the very marrow of my bones, but I could see nothing else but the old man's face on his person, because I directed that ray as if by some sort of instinct precisely upon the damned spot. And now have I told you what you mistake for madness is but over acuteness of the senses? Now, I say there came to my ears a sound. It was a low, dull, quick sound, and much such sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. And I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. And it increased my fury as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. And for some time, I refrained. I kept still. I said nothing. I held the lantern in motion as I tried to maintain as best I could the ray upon the eye. And meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker, and louder, and louder, and louder. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder and louder. You mark me well, do you? in the dead hour of night and amidst the dreadful silence of this horrible house, so strange a noise as this excited me into uncontrollable wrath, and for some time I refrained. I kept still, I said nothing. But continued to get louder and louder and louder and louder and louder until I thought that his heart would just burst, and now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's time had come.